Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joy at Work. Glad to be with you again. Thank you for taking time to watch these videos and give me feedback. The conversation is always great, whether it's on LinkedIn, YouTube, or text. Enjoy it. Keep them coming. So, Super Eagles beat the Gabonese team, so we get to play the Democratic Republic of Congo over the weekend, and maybe we'll win that and move forward. So, here's to the World Cup in 2026. Like, fingers crossed, toes crossed, just hoping the boys find a way to advance. As long as they're in the tournament, there's a chance. So, just looking forward to that. Moving on to the topic for this week, and I was going to continue to talk about fantasy and Lacan. I've had some great conversations about fantasy in the workplace and what that looks like, what that can mean, and wanted to refine some thoughts. But a post this week got me thinking about the organizational critic. And I think I saw something to the effect of like embrace organizational critics because they're the people with the best with your company's best interests at heart. And I paused and thought like that's probably fair to a point. That's not completely true because that assumes that every organizational critic truly has their company's best interests at heart. And it made me wonder what kind of critic or what kinds of critiques I offer, what kinds of critiques you offer, because I do think there's a correlation between the nature of the critiques you offer, the kind of critic you are, and potentially like your overall work experience. So there are people who critique what's going on in their workplace. They're critics because they truly believe that decisions being made, the actions being taken from their vantage point do harm to the collective, do not advance the company, are not the right thing, maybe are not ethical for whatever reason. And so they're really looking for them, looking outside of themselves. Their critique is other focused. Now, just because your critique is other focused doesn't mean it doesn't impact you. So there's always a bit of self involved here. There's always a bit of self interest, but you can start really caring for what's happening to others. And sometimes it may not impact you, but you have just concern for others. So there are people who critique from that perspective. But there are people who also critique and are critics purely based on like self-interest. They don't want anything to change because change impacts them in a way that they just don't want to go through. They don't want to adopt new technology. They don't want to try new processes. They don't want a new leader. They don't want anything. And in those situations, it's largely about maintaining or preserving the status quo. It's about keeping in place what has existed up until that point. And then you have sort of the hybrid kind of critic who's like vacillates between thinking about the collective and thinking about themselves. And any one of us at any point in time can actually be a critic of a certain type. But there are people who like occupy particular stances quite a bit. I've worked with people who really are focused on how can we make our organization better and really think about things that could improve the way work is done and how work goes. And they're genuinely like vested in making things better. And some of these people sometimes, they're just caught up in this critique of theirs. It's been said that not everyone survives a revolution. So sometimes when you're championing for change, you can get caught up in it and not survive it and not even see the change you're championing. But there are people like that. But that's not everyone. And we should not kid ourselves and suggest that that's everyone. Not everyone in the workplace necessarily acts from a place of good faith. And that should be understandable because in life, not everyone acts from a place of good faith. Some people are just about themselves. They're complaining because they don't want anything to be different for themselves. And in either case, or in both cases, really, the way you show up, I truly believe, impacts whether you experience joy at work, or at least how you experience it. If you're really about making things better for the whole, you're acting maybe from a place of service, then you probably have a certain kind of orientation, a sort of kind of uh, reward that you feel for making the case for better for everyone. Maybe. But if you're all about critiquing and being that critic because if things are not your way, it's wrong, then in those situations, you're probably more miserable than not. And if you find yourself in a situation where that's it for you, your critique is really focused on trying to identify things that just don't align with your personal way of wanting to do things and don't align with your self-interest, then that's probably not the best place for you to be. In both situations, there can be consequences for being a critic, right? This is also very, very true. But we get to choose, to some degree, I suppose, the critic we want to be where we are. So, are you an organizational critic in the first place? Do you provide critiques? And if you do, which of these are you? Are you more other focused, if you will, or are you largely self focused, or find yourself vacillating between the two? I don't know. Share your thoughts. Let me know. But just something I thought about after reading a post this week and thought I'd share. All right. Here's to everyone experiencing more joy at work. See you around. Bye.